Good morning, everybody. Hope you're doing well. I will go ahead and get started with my introductions, and then we can go ahead and start the meeting. Welcome to the November 2021 Historic Resources Committee meeting. My name is Robert Watkins. I'm city staff, and I will be making sure that things run smoothly virtually. I'll be moderating the meeting and letting people on and off to speak as necessary. The only note that I tend to give before these meetings is about the public comment policy. The HRC allows a public comment section at the beginning of the agenda for any folks who are watching at home. If you'd like to provide comment, please register for the meeting on the city calendar. Then you'll have to log into the Zoom meeting with your phone or your laptop. And then we'll go over the policy when that portion of the agenda comes on. But again, just if you want to provide comment, you'll have to log into the meeting. So with that being said, I can pass things over to the chair of the HRC, Phil Varner.
Thanks, Robert. I call this meeting of the Historic Resources Committee to order, and we will start with Robert doing the roll call.
Please just indicate that you're here with, I think just a visual signal is fine. Sally Duncan.
Here.
Heather Hill. I think Heather will be joining us. She'll have to leave early, but I don't see her logged on yet. Genevieve Keller.
Here. Good morning.
Morning. Jessica Livingston.
Here.
Hi, Jessica. Margaret O'Brien.
Here.
Jelaine Schmidt. I think Jelaine should be here, but I don't see her yet. Kay Slaughter. Hi, Kay. Dee Dee Smith.
Here.
And Phil, our chair. Hi, Phil.
Hi. Okay, and I guess one additional announcement was that Rachel Lloyd has resigned from the committee due to personal obligations. So we are down, I think, 4 members now. So if there's anybody who you think would make a good member, please encourage them to apply for the open positions. Okay, and with that, I'll hand it back to you, Robert, for public comment.
Sure. So I will just briefly read the public comment policy, and then I will go ahead and let anyone who wishes to speak. At the beginning of each meeting, not more than 10 minutes will be allowed for the introduction of any guests or public comments. Speakers may speak for a maximum of 2 minutes and shall begin by identifying their name and address. So with that being said, if you're in the meeting and you'd like to provide public comment, please raise your hand using the raise hand feature. Okay, I already see a raised hand from Paul Mack. Mr. Mack, I will allow you to talk. You'll need to unmute yourself after that, and then you'll have 3 minutes to speak. So Mr. Mack, I'm allowing you to talk.
Okay, good morning. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, good. Okay. My name is Paul Mack. I live at 106 Mill Creek Drive in Charlottesville, just outside the city limits, but I am a former history teacher and I'm a member of Sojourners United Church of Christ. And along with some others, we are quite concerned about the space that is taken up by parking spaces from the space next to the Zero Court Square building, where hundreds, if not thousands, of enslaved human beings were sold. And we are advocating and agitating for removal of those 2 parking spaces and replacement with bricks to continue the space, to enlarge the space where those individuals were standing. We're supposed to be joined by Freeman Allen, who is on the road, and he said if he can't log in, please send his apologies, but you may know him as an advocate for this. And he's on Wednesdays, he commits to the silent vigil at the courthouse square. So I'm in favor of doing this. Although I live in the county, not the city. We use the city, of course, a lot. And so I'm quite interested in recognizing the sacrifice that many people made. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mack. I also see a hand raised from Marvin Morgan. Mr. Morgan, I will allow you to talk, and then you'll need to unmute yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you very much. Took me a moment to unmute. I'm Marvin Morgan. I am the interim pastor at Sojourners United Church of Christ. My address is 925 Dorchester Place, Unit 306, Charlottesville. Thank you so very much for inviting the community into your discussion this morning. Including us means far more to us than you could imagine. Someone said, and I was unable to pin it down earlier this morning, that what you do for justice today might not be much, but it is extremely important that you do it. That was one way of saying that the decisions you're going to make today at a local level will have tremendous implications for what the state does at the state level. Things such as getting rid of the death penalty, for example. It took local actions to cause the state to make that important decision. Similarly, the decisions made at the state level should impact some of the decisions at the national level. And so I want to urge you today to be as progressive in your thinking as you can be. Earlier this week, there was a major auction that is subject to return some resources to the Jewish community because a Van Gogh painting was sold. And slave descendants don't have such relics to assure justice is done. All we have are the memories. If you're willing to expand the space so the automobiles do not block that memorial space, that would be a blessing. That will be one for the city to experience for many years to come. We know the decision regarding a major museum are far in the future, but your decision today will begin the process of honoring that space in a way that shows dignity for all people. And I'm trusting that you're going to do exactly that. Thank you so much for the invitation to speak.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morgan. If there are any other people who'd like to speak, please use the raise hand feature, or if you're calling in, you can press *9 on your phone. I don't see any other raised hands, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Robert. Okay, we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Are there any concerns or changes that anyone would like to see in the agenda for today? Okay. Oh, yeah, Jillian.
I don't have it right in front of me. Is there an opportunity for us, the committee members, to respond to members of the public about these matters, or is that for later on in the?
You know, we actually haven't had that as a regular
Okay.
part of our agenda, but that's something that I know several other committees have. So, I mean, I'd certainly be in favor of having that if those responses don't necessarily fit into something else that's in the agenda for today.
And it may very well. So yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, we have an engagement of the descendant community for Court Square Slave Auction Block site
Mhm.
item. So I think that would probably be a good place
Alright.
to
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
respond to that.
Phil, I wonder, or Robert, do we have the opportunity to share the screen so that the members of the public could see our agenda if this is the item they're most interested in, to see when we would be discussing?
Yes, I can share my screen
Can
just
we
to
just
go
put
over
that
the,
up for a couple of minutes? I think that would be really helpful.
sure.
Yeah.
So for anyone watching from home, I'm just going to share my screen to the agenda. So if you can see, we just had the public comment section, which I'm highlighting here. We are currently approving the agenda. And then item number 4 on our agenda, we'll be talking about the Court Square site. So I think that some members of the committee might take a moment to respond to the comments we just received during that portion of the agenda. And that should just be coming up in a few minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, could I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So
Okay.
moved. Oh,
Uh,
second.
Yeah, okay, Kay with a motion and Dee Dee with the second. All those in favor, please so indicate so. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes. The agenda is approved. Next on to the approval of the meeting notes. Does anybody have any additional information they'd like to, or changes they'd like to see in the meeting notes? Jenny?
I wondered if we could do something slightly unusual. I understand the brevity of minutes and that they really only need to record, who was present and actions taken. But I wondered if it would be possible to attach the transcript of our conversation with Mabel Wilson, so that it's not, I have every confidence in the city to hang on to things, but I wondered if we could attach the transcript so that it would be there, one, for the public to see if they wanted to peruse our minutes, and two, so it would be there as we and future members and counselors and whoever want to come back and refer to that, because I think it could be sort of a, an original document that people would benefit from seeing.
I'm pretty sure we can do that, Jenny. I'll work with communications. I don't necessarily know where the transcripts land, but I'm sure that it won't be too hard to find, and I can easily find that, attach that, and then upload it as necessary.
Are
Yeah.
these meetings recorded too? Is there a recording of it?
Yeah, they are stored. You can watch the video stream on the city's website.
That might be another reference to actually watch. I know, I agree with you, Jenny. I mean, for perpetuity of it, transcripts are better, but in the short term, people might want to watch it too.
Just because it's something kind of unusual. But with that said, I would like to offer one amendment in reference to that discussion that Dr. Wilson showed examples and talked about dispersed memorials such as the one in Berlin. And the name is escaping me at the moment.
The Stolperstein.
And your German's better than mine too.
No, that's terrible. Anybody who actually knows German would probably is cringing right now.
Right.
So you would just like,
Better than mine. Anyway, I'd like to offer that amendment.
I can do that.
Yeah, and I was thinking that would be a good thing in general to just add the link to the recording in the meeting notes going forward. The only concern I have about the
But I'd
transcript,
love to have the transcript because links can change.
yeah,
If
I
we
think the
don't
only
have the
concern I have
transcript,
to,
It would be
About-
there.
yeah, about the transcript is that it may not actually be very good because it's sort of automated, and so we'd actually want a transcript that was done by a person, which is maybe something that we could look into, is to actually get somebody to transcribe it, so we have an
Yeah,
actual
you're right.
record of what she said, not
Yeah, the
that's-
verbatim ones are a little bit
Yeah.
wacky.
Yeah.
But
Well,
they're,
let me-
they're still helpful, though. I mean, I think even the
Well, yeah.
automatically generated ones, and it's a lot of staff time and staff
Yeah.
stretch in. And one of our speakers said to be progressive, and I don't want us to fall into the trap of being the kind of small conservative, which is like, the kind of
In what respect?
in like not posting a transcript because was automatically generated, and that's not good,
Oh, no, sorry, I meant to say that I think that we should, in addition to that, maybe think about getting that transcribed professionally so that we
And
could.
and you're talking about the transcription of when we have speakers, correct?
Well,
Well,
specifically the
this
Mabel
one in
Wilson
particular.
session.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure we weren't talking meetings, because.
No.
No, not always. I just think this was unusual, and we might.
Oh, absolutely.
refer to it,
Agree.
And others in the public who are very interested in this concept might benefit from, if they didn't see us live. Might
Got
benefit.
it. In
Yeah.
fact, we have, and Robert can address it later, and then I'll sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but Robert's got, we have an opportunity. Robert can better explain it to air some things. Sorry, I'm looking at that screen, not look. So it feels like I'm talking about
Anyway, we won't do this all the time.
yeah, sorry. No, but we have an
Thank you.
opportunity, and that's Jenny, great idea, because it's there's some content that we've been offered an opportunity to put into the media, and so this might be a really good one to add to that, and probably could be edited appropriately. But yeah, Robert can fill in later about that. So, all right, continue. Sorry.
Yeah, I guess just to wrap this up, let me look at the Zoom transcript, because from my experience, the Zoom transcripts aren't awful. And then once I look at it, I can get a better sense of how accurate it is. And then it might take a while to actually post these, but if they're pretty clean, I can go ahead and attach it. If not, I'll report back and work with Phil and Jenny and others over the next month to figure out if we need to hire a more professional transcriber or figure out a way to transcribe those.
Sounds good. Okay, so could I get, I forgot how we do this with the meeting minutes. Do you have to make a motion to amend the minutes as printed in the packet and then approve that and then approve the actual minutes? Or can we just do a motion to approve the minutes with the transcript on it? Okay.
And the one amendment about the dispersed sites. Or addition.
Okay, would somebody like to make that motion?
Well, I'll make that motion.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, Dee Dee. Okay, all those in favor of approving the meeting notes, please indicate so. Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes. Okay, now on to the next item on the agenda, engagement of the descendant community for Court Square's slave auction block site. Jelaine, I guess I'll start by passing it over to you for any, I think you had some comments in response to the commenters, and I know you have an update about some of the work that's been going on.
Right. Yeah, the graduate student researchers are delving into the Chancery records and doing a lot of work. And I think they've talked with Phil, as well as Sam Towler and other folks around town, and are just finding stuff, great stuff. And kind of question is how to store it. So they're at the moment, making spreadsheets and doing backups of the spreadsheets so that that this is preserved with the goal of having it available to the public. Our next step is we're setting up meetings. I talked with Andrea Douglas about this at the Jefferson School just yesterday, setting up meetings with her and representatives of the descendant community, specifically descendant of enslaved communities at UVA, and with library staff and others that are know about data management, because the question is about data accessibility. I mean, management of it, organization of it, accessibility of it, and then issue of data sovereignty, which is something that's kind of coming up more and more in public history work. Who owns this? And, in this particularly sensitive issue, with descendants, So anyway, so all that is to say it's not solved, but this is our next step that we're doing is looking to hold a meeting to talk about data management, with those folks. So that is one thing. And then let's see, there were folks in the public comments who were commenting about this space along the number 0 building there on that part of East Jefferson. I guess I'm looking at the map here that someone so helpfully sent along. I should say that about sometime in the last month or so, I happened to be speaking with his last name escapes me, Sam. He is the deputy city manager.
Sam
Sanders, thank you. Yeah. And as you know, he was, kind of getting up to speed and just kind of going around the community and finding out what's what, what are some of the conversations they're having. I brought up the desire on the part of many members of the public to more properly memorialize the sale of enslaved persons there in Court Square. And I brought up these parking spaces there, with the, and noting that those are, they're ADA parking spaces, and that's, and so that's important to, that we maintain, for folks that need ADA parking, that there would be something there that's accessible to the courthouse. But then I noted that on the other side of the building, on the exact other side, there are several kind of regular parking spaces. And so I wondered, is it possible that, this could be rearranged so that there would still be an equal number of ADA parking spots available, but it would just be, just on the other side of the building, there. And he was very receptive to this and said that in his capacity as, someone that does, management of kind of, these sorts of physical spaces, that he would be willing to look into that. So anyway, I'm hearing this kind of, coming from the public, and, there are processes, but also I'm also very mindful of what Dr. Wilson told us, last month when she came and visited us, which was to start out very, very open, that she said, with respect to what memorialization might look like, where even it might be, because, and she was recalling how when they started at UVA with the Memorial to Enslaved Labor process, that they just really had an open mind. There were kind of several possible locations, but they hadn't nailed it down, and that, and then they kind of listened to descendants and then kind of let that inform the process and stuff. So anyway, so I just wanted to put that out there, that this was not any kind of formal conversation, that I had with Sam. I was just kind of, telling him that this is something we're dealing with here, and these are ideas that have come from the public. And I think also Jenny brought this up at one point too, about parking spaces and, possible space there. That this is a discussion. So if we, if we want to do something more formal, in terms of requests, about space, time, funds, and I think Phil, you probably have something to talk about there. These are possibilities, but anyway, but know that the data collection process is going forward with Jake and Medesha. And then we're, meeting about, kind of the arcane issue of how to store it and where. And then, physical space also, so.
Jelaine, can you just remind us kind of what the extent of the research that the two students are doing, just briefly?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they have touched base with folks that have been doing prior work, Sam Towler, Phil, and others, folks from Burke Brown Step, that have been doing this, so that they're not recreating the wheel, and they have been directed by Sam Towler and others to the Chancery records there at the courthouse. And I understand that they're going through there, kind of looking, it's quite painstaking, I think, to kind of, look through there, but this is what the archivists do, looking through those records there.
Kay, you've
Follow up on
unmuted.
that, because
Yeah.
that was the question I wanted to ask Jolene. I gathered that they're probably in the Chancery records looking for specific sales and transfers. And I wonder, do you know if it gives any information about sites in any of those Chancery records, or if it's just in?
I
short?
myself have not seen them, and I could go look at their
Yeah.
spreadsheet, what they have so far, but yeah, I think they're trying to collect, all of that as much as is possible in order to make it, into a searchable database and
Right.
it's accessible and all this. So, yeah, I believe they're collecting that information as well. Yeah.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Yeah, Kay, to also follow up on that, like the advertisements have been a really good source of the sites also, and I think will probably inform the walking tour map some also.
Right, and Phil's really been digging into that, finding old newspaper advertisements,
And then maybe you're going to talk about this more, but there is the descendant community, conversations with descendant communities, which is the piece that I'm sort of most confused as we're getting feedback from a community group that is not a descendant community group for the most part. I mean, they may be or may not be, but some of them might. We know some of them aren't. And so how those two pieces how those two pieces come together or don't.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think that we as HRC need to make a kind of a formal recommendation to council about how to proceed, so that there's an actual roadmap, that can be going on, because it doesn't seem right, as I said before, to kind of keep pulling people into meetings, and there's kind of this, we don't know where we're going. So I think we need to formalize that. It's nice, we do have some researchers working on it, but it would be nice to kind of pull in the public, and then, yeah, having a more organized forum to incorporate ideas, and with kind of special attention to, I think, what descendants are saying. I think, we want to hear from all sectors of the public, of course, and this is a city concern, but that we are, being particularly attentive to, and I think, kind of, advocacy can be good, it can, in as much as it can help to kind of, push along that process, that, but still, as we're being conscious of, these are folks' ancestors, so I hear what you're saying, how there's, there are members of the public that are quite eager, myself among them, to do something here, and descendant community folks who are, concerned about how's this data going to be used, and how, at the same time, wanting to make it educational, and also how's the data going to be used and accessed, that sort of thing. So I guess that's kind of a wordy way of saying that it's not clear, how these publics, the kind of multiple publics, will come together, in kind of deliberating for, what in the end is going to be a, kind of a, we hope, a city project or space. So, and Phil, do you have anything to, or sorry, go ahead, Jen.
Well, you were saying much of what I was thinking, that it might help for us to clarify that we have at least 3 groups of stakeholders or constituents. Primary among them are what we have been preferencing over the last, years now, with the shutdown, to reach out to the descendant community. Those people particularly who can identify a link, but others maybe who are in the area who think they have a link, or it's the closest they're ever going to be to having a link to their enslaved past. So that's kind of what we've been prioritizing. Second are the advocates, and as you said, they're very, very important. And then the third group, I think, are professionals who are historians, who are designers, who are government officials, who have another set of responsibilities, either to their professional ethics and best standards, or their ability to do their job and, as you said, address the parking spaces and all of those things. So I think if we could address that up front, that that's a process that all of these groups need to be included, but that at this point in time, we have preferenced the known and affinity descendants.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay.
So might it be possible at some point, when the descendant community feels ready, even if you're doing it by Zoom, to open it up just to hear from, say, the public and have a little bit of a dialogue, between those two different groups?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think, but but part of that needs to be like, we need to have a roadmap, timeframe, budget, so that we can have a kind of more formalized, facilitated process of community engagement. And that is where those publics, I think, can come together, and we can hear from that, from the various constituencies that Jenny mentioned here. I'm gonna put in the chat box here, I'm gonna put a link to, I'm gonna make it available to everyone here, to a podcast episode that came out a week or so ago, in which I'm interviewing Myra Anderson, who is a descendant of the Hearn family, who were sold there at the Eagle Tavern sale, the 1829 sale of the Jefferson estate. Anyway, and so this is for your for listening later on, but I wanted to make known that this is now available.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That
Yeah.
looks very interesting.
Yeah.
So then in terms of taking action now, I think what we should do is plan on presenting a preliminary report to council in January after the new council takes office. Try to get most of that preliminary report done by the next meeting so we can sort of talk about it and approve it. I'll have to look at what the city council schedule is for January and whether we could even get on it. I'm sure that it's going to be quite packed in January, but at least present some, sort of a preliminary status report of what we've done so far, or I say we, what Jelaine has done so far, and what the plan is going forward with that, with the expectation of doing a more full report probably sometime mid-year. I assume that we want to wait until after the researchers have completed their work, which I'm guessing is going to be this school year.
Yeah, we're hoping that they can make at least a kind of report of work in progress, in the spring, that could also be kind of informing this discussion.
Yeah, good. So yeah, I think we want to include that in whatever we report to council. So planning on something mid-year next year of here's where we are. Maybe we will have gotten to a point where we have finished this research and descendant engagement phase and are ready to make recommendations to council as to how they should move forward with a design phase. But I think that's probably a good place to start with how we report back to council and do that.
So you're saying, like, in January, we want to get on the agenda, we want to send something to council in January, and specifically about what exactly? Kind of budget, or?
I mean, I think budget is a primary thing.
Yeah.
But then also, which I'll speak to in a second. But then also just sort of a status report almost of saying,
Okay.
like, we're in the middle of this, we're not complete, but here's a little bit of what we have and where we're going with it.
All right.
And I think
So
that's
to do that in January, and then later on, when we have more data from the researchers, and another report, a subsequent report about, okay, all right.
Yeah, and we'll have done a more descendant engagement by then. I mean, I'm thinking that I am hoping that the pace will pick up a little bit as COVID recedes, and that we, yeah, of course we said that last year at this time, so
Yeah.
who knows?
Um,
But yeah, so having something more more complete mid-year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that sound like a reasonable?
Yeah, and maybe there was another issue that I wanted to report back on to this committee about. I talked with Professor Ann Bailey, who is the author of The Weeping Time, about the possibility of coming here. I think it, might be a bit out of our budget, and I did suggest a virtual, on Zoom. So anyway, I think maybe what I'll do is I'll poke around UVA and see if we can maybe find some funds for an honorary, and perhaps do that, I don't know, Black History Month or Liberation and Freedom Days, or, something around in there to kind of get input from her about what she's found in her research about that was the 1859 sale of 436 individuals, I believe it was, in Savannah, Georgia, which was the largest ever sale of enslaved persons. And something that's been happening in Savannah lately, and I was just looking at this last night, there's a lawsuit too, that some, community groups of, kind of pressuring the city to preserve some of this land that was slated for development for something else, to try to, have something there. But the last, couple of years there in Savannah, there's been, kind of this growing movement there of memorializing that spot there. And they got a plaque from the State History Board, and the governor sent a letter, and, so there's, it's kind of picking up steam anyway. So this is just to say that this is something that's happening, in other places, and we're kind of part of a broader conversation than just what's happening here, and it's not just hashtag Charlottesville, again, kind of with this, but this is something that is getting more attention.
Yeah,
and that we can contribute to the conversation, I think, in a special way.
Jelaine, I've been talking with the library. I've been talking with Maureen Spokes at the public library, and I just raised the possibility of hosting Ann Bailey or another speaker in partnership with the library, and they were very receptive. So as soon as we in co-hosting with us, I think, if we are able to get Ann Bailey or another speaker, we can definitely take advantage of that partnership. Personally, I think that there's a different audience that you might expect if you host it through the library versus if you just host it through city platforms.
Or through
So
UVA. That was something I was concerned about don't mean to besmirch my employer, my day job, there, but there is I think a different, talking about publics, again, I think that something coming from the library, does, kind of gather in a different constituency, and frankly, one that I think, needs to be brought into this, and UVA maybe kind of take a backseat in some of these things, I think is good. But yeah, that's good to hear, because it was, I thought, maybe if we get several organizations together, this is something we could do. I see Tom Chapman here, and others, but so that's good to hear.
So then I guess the other question that has, I think, been a sort of an underlying item is what's the scope of the project, and how much should we be requesting? And this is always the chicken and the egg problem we have with this, of the descendants have said that they want something significant, but we need to do something to express that. We and council need to do something to express that they're actually serious about doing something significant, or we're always going to be limited in engagement because there's no evidence that we are going to end up with something significant. So I'm of the opinion that we need to sort of set a fairly high goal for how much this project, how much should be spent on this project, and then lobby council to allocate money in the capital improvement program budget instead of the general fund, over several years probably, because this project will likely take several years, like the memorial to enslaved laborers did, and start now by requesting that council put in the next budget a capital improvement line item for a significant amount of money towards that. And then also probably engage Albemarle County for the same, since you know, this is not just the city of Charlottesville, this is Albemarle County in general that we're talking about, the human trafficking, and the courthouse itself is Albemarle County. So, okay.
Others may know more about this than I, but I seem to recollect that for big projects like this for the city, that generally you want to, the first step is you want to have some kind of a feasibility study. And that might be the first budget request that we could even get, you know, funded this next year, is some kind of a, you know, once you know what, and we don't yet know what, you know, the scope of it would be, but once sort of putting that into the budget so that you can, when you're ready for that feasibility study, the money is there, and you then get to the next step of how much it would cost and so forth.
Yeah.
Is that the same as funding sort of design professionals?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it depending, you know, like I think one thing that's probably coming up soon, and maybe, no, I think it's already happened, that there's something in the budget to redesign Market Street Park, you know, but that's like a landscape thing, like, you know, to the landscaping, because it had been needing it for a long time. But this would be different from that, you know, but it would be.
Yeah.
And
it might involve a team of people. I mean, years ago when I was on council, we did have such a study, and it did involve a real team of like landscape professionals in the subject matter. It was a whole bunch of things, and for a feasibility study. So
yeah, I would say that that sort of goes into the difference between what we're doing right now and sort of doing research and descendant engagement and relationship building, and then that separate design build process that we don't expect to have any recommendation for a specific outcome of this or a specific thing, but we expect to have a set of options that are just possibilities, and that the design and build process will be funded and run separately by the city to do that.
Can you say that again, Phil? You're saying that what we're doing is collecting information to recommend the next steps, and then the city would take it from there, just in terms of, okay. I'm just thinking before, when we were talking about thinking outside of the box and thinking of memorials and how they can be temporary or absent, or they can be, you know, it would be nice to see the city do something that was, I'm thinking of the Richmond, the statues in Richmond, and how the projection, the artists who did the projections onto the statues there would just be, you know, to think outside of the box in terms of this space being a physical space for them. You know, there can be many, thinking creatively rather than the traditional monument would be an opportunity here as well.
Yeah. That being said, I mean, and yeah, I mean, yeah, the light projections and stuff, and that is all good. I think there is something about, yeah, kind of claiming a physical space, you know, and that is something that we heard a lot from the descendants, you know, because it tends to be these sorts of memorials tend to be more ephemeral, or like, as we saw with the plaque, you know, easily removed or something. And so, yeah.
And
yeah. Sorry, Kay.
We were talking, I think it was one of the last couple of times, about, well, last time with Mildred Wilson, we were talking some about how it might be a much larger space than you have something, one little place. And also prior to that, we had talked with Jeff about the things that are going to happen with the Levy building and the space that's going to be available there. So at least I think we shouldn't let these spaces get away and be allocated for other things.
Mhm.
At least somehow bringing up in our reports or whatever, that at the right time, we need to have sort of be able to engage some professionals to help us think or help the descendant community and the public and us all think through more clearly what, I wouldn't just see it like hand it off to the city. Now you go
Oh, yeah.
get it.
Right.
Yeah, I think we'll still probably be pretty engaged with that. And I think the point you just brought up is really correct in that the outcome of what we do is really putting, sort of putting that framework in place and saying, here are all the spaces that are important. The actual what's been referred to as the slave auction block location has probably gotten the most attention, even though about half of the individuals who were sold in Court Square were actually sold in front of the courthouse. And that, maybe that corner of the courthouse is actually the more significant space, that it's actually, representing the fact that the courthouse was the place where most of this, most of this pain occurred, and that, replacing a bush and the 100-year-old Monticello sign with a significant installation, would be a good thing. And then also drawing in, as you mentioned, the Levy building and the square in front of that, the Swan Tavern site, the Eagles Tavern site, the Jefferson Hotel site, and then other, numerous other places within Albemarle County, and linking all these together in a very cohesive way. Yeah, Jenny?
I'm glad you brought that up about the marker. And Jessica was talking about the projection art. I think in a way we're already in a sort of an ad hoc designing a process by having events and various commemorations. And so I would suggest that we try to design a process that has public engagement, which we're already doing, some public education with lectures, some commemoration or observance events. And as we're doing that, and to try to think about more artistic events we could have. But I wonder if we should go back inside the original box. And I was one of the people who said, no, we don't want a state highway marker, but it's really the low hanging fruit. And it is a real recognition of an event because it's part of the record of the Commonwealth of Virginia. And it would be something for which there's a very clear-cut process. And as you said, there's the Monticello marker that was placed at a time when there were different rules in play about where it could be located. So it might even be that the state would prefer to put it or its replacement marker somewhere else. And we could claim that space, that it could be a marker that's talking about enslavement and its role in the judiciary legal center of Albemarle County. And I think there's still there are 100 words or something. So it's very short, but it would show that we're acknowledging the events, we're acknowledging the process, and reclaiming a space.
Yeah,
So,
I think the only concern I have with any of these actions is that we've sort of staked out that we're doing an engagement process and an information gathering process, but we're not actually going to take any action. And that, recommending these, that we do anything is really, I feel like a counter indicator that we could just do something insignificant and then be done with it. And likewise with the 2 parking spaces, it's an action and we're sort of leading towards something that may happen in the future. Whereas if we, keep this constrained to simply building relationships, gathering feedback and consolidating research, and explicitly not taking any action, then we, sort of don't bleed into those other actions.
Hey, Phil, if I could just fill in. So the space there in front of the courthouse and in front of the county courthouse, and in fact, curious that Monticello marker, it's been pointed out many times, has some errors in it, but that's entirely, that is it's within the city, so we actually have purview over it as far as BAR review, but it is county property, and what they put on it is up to them. I know that they had been in the process of reevaluating everything at Court Square, but then some personnel change. So I'm not sure what the status of that is. So that's probably something we could reach out to maybe Emily Kilroy and ask where things are. The other thing about the Levy addition and the court project, the county has the lead on that. And when that came to the BAR, Jenny, you may have been sitting in on that meeting and that discussion, but the designers said that the county is or has initiated a process of what to do in that space. If you can imagine, between the Levy building and the site of the Swan Tavern, that's where a courtyard area will be. And the design of that is being developed by county designers working on it. So again, I think just to be clear, we need to reach out to the county and ask them what's going on. They have not brought anything back to the BAR. I was expecting something, but so anyway, so as far as cities places, we know where that is, but what happens at the county courthouse and what happens in front of the new courthouse addition will have to be coordinated with county personnel.
Is there any, and I want to, in terms of just like the design process, I think my point was just to try to think of increasing engagement with more dynamic presentation while having a marker that would be permanent. Is there any, in terms of the engagement and doing all of this work and then handing it off, is there any concern of it falling flat or not being continued, or is that maybe having the city commit funds
so there's a couple ways. So one is as relative to the spaces that the city has control over, and I had sent out the RFPs from 2 years ago. I don't know, time's kind of flying, maybe from 2017, 2018, but the RFPs that the city had issued for the downtown parks, as they called it, and that was only for the property that the city controls. But in that examination of the courts of the parks was also this examination of some of the sites that are important. So the consultant or whoever responded to the RFP had to include an engagement process related to what we've been discussing. So and what the idea, my understanding is what the HRC is developing could be inserted into that or added to that, but it would have to be for any project of this scale, there would be an RFP that goes out, and the HRC would ask council, please refer to this work, include this work, incorporate this work. But there's the question of whether they'll go and re-sow that ground again, I don't know. That's up to you all to sort of determine. I think it would be helpful to insert what we hear into it. But the pieces as far as designing new things at Court Square would not include anything that the county owns. So that's why I'm trying to make sure we distinguish those. But this would be, like I said, I'll send it out. You can see the process would be an RFP. This is these types of things are managed by city Parks and Rec. So it would be an RFP issued by through Parks and Rec, and hopefully we would be making recommendations that they would incorporate into it. But there's at no point, just so everyone out there listening knows, at no point can the city's Historic Resources Committee construct or erect or fund, something that likely could cost a couple $100,000. That's not within your purview to do. And additionally, in fact, I received an email from someone in the city while this is within city government while we're talking. The decision about parking spaces and changing any spaces, that's a process that and that Mr. Duncan in the city can tell us how that would be initiated, but that wouldn't be anything that we do, and then it would go up to city council. The HRC has no role in that other than to make a recommendation to council. So
yeah, and I think that's exactly it. That recommendation is really important to go back to your point, Jessica, like it could, in the design process, they could just ignore that and put up, you know, a figurative sculpture somewhere that nobody asked for and nobody wanted and whatever. But when what we have is the output of our committee and this defendant feedback and the research, hopefully informs that process well. If it doesn't, we have a cudgel that we can, you know, beat them with to like get them to do what the descendants said that they wanted.
And I didn't mean to imply that HRC could, you know, wave a magic wand and make that happen with parking, but what I was saying was that, you know, we can certainly have those conversations, and, you know, that there's an openness to, you know, to doing that process. Yeah, there's a process, but yeah, I think we have a little bully pulpit here, you know.
Yeah, Jenny?
I wondered if, in addition to, or instead of having an annual retreat early in 2022, if we might be able to schedule a work session with council, because Heather will not be on council anymore, and she's been our liaison. And with so many other things going on, I don't know that this has been paramount in anybody's mind. So if we could have a conversation with the people who are the elected officials for the next 2 years, we could broach this topic of memorialization and the spaces in and around the Court Square area, and sort of maybe move forward together. They might decide to charge us with something or tell us to stay out of it. It's not something they're interested in, although I would doubt that that would be the case. And I'd feel a little more secure about us going forward if we did it that way. I don't know what Dee Dee and Kay, who've been on council, think if that would be a way to go or not.
I think it's a good idea if they'll do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will be curious, you know, it's not clear we'll get another city council rep. They seem to be changing.
Right.
The way they looked at boards and commissions, but if they'll do it, it certainly wouldn't hurt.
Well, I mean, it's certainly an important topic, and one that comes up periodically, I guess, for all the counselors in their correspondence and people who speak in public comment. So it might be good to just from the beginning try to have some combined approach about how we would move forward with that, because it's something that has to happen. It's an issue of scale and responsibility.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think that was the intention that I had with having this preliminary report council early in the year. But if we could get a session with even some, you know, even a few people from on council, I think that would help to, you know, really solidify this a little better so that there's, you know, we're on the same page.
I think it would help, though, to get, in order to get that meeting, to really have a status report and say, this is sort of what we want to discuss as we move forward now. And you know, maybe that just means moving forward with it a little bit more expeditiously, so that we could really arrange during December to review a report and to make that request, or even now to say we'd like to meet with the new council in January, but we're preparing a report that we would have as sort of substance to discuss.
Great idea.
And going all the way back to the beginning, where Jelaine was saying, let's get a process. I mean, that would really, I think, help with a process. And that process, if we can do that, would also help to respond to individual community groups, since there are more than one, or groups in general who will inform this, the outcome, is to be able to also respond and say, here is our process, here are the voices who are important, including yours, to inform how we do things, but to try to offset, we want you to do this and it's a good idea, so why don't you do it? Is that there's a process involved. It's inclusive. I think it would be helpful.
So then the other issue is what we're looking for financially. I think that we're probably looking at something between $500,000 and $1 million, between possibly having something, or probably having something in Court Square, and then having other related sites within Albemarle County also memorialized. So, that's a pretty significant amount of money, and why it's necessary now to start getting this into the SIP budgets, probably over years, and also possibly help working with Albemarle County to also fund it. So, that's something going forward that is obviously going to be a lot of discussion around, but did those numbers sound reasonable? Or
Who knows? Well, if we're really, and you've just introduced another pretty big piece, which is other places in Albemarle County to memorialize, if the plan goes that broadly, then we should be talking to Albemarle County, not just here's our recommendation and we want you to fund it. That, really getting them involved, if that in fact is the goal, to expand it into Albemarle County or even into the courthouse space, because that is Albemarle County.
Yeah.
But I think I know what you're referring to, Phil, is that these sales went on, all over. But yeah, we should involve them sooner rather than later. They could be then yet another one of these constituency groups that we need to involve.
Yeah, okay, did you have some?
I would just say, I think even just looking at the Court Square area, we ought to involve the county. The county owns part of Court Square. If we do anything significant in not just one space, but sort of generally there, it's likely to involve county property, and I think we should involve them early.
And let's be really clear that the county has been really proactive in the past couple of years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And they've gotten a lot more done than we have in terms of memorializing sites of African-American significance. I mean, they have a dedicated staff member to do that, who recently resigned, but I think they have one.
I was going to say Siri was behind a lot of that.
She was, but they did do it. And so, it's hopefully they'll be able to get that kind of
and it's always possible that when they restart the reimagining Court Square process that stalled about a year ago, coincidental with COVID and Siri leaving, that will be more incorporated into this work that we're doing. We are really far behind on the agenda, but I'm still gonna take a 5-minute break so we can come back fresh for the downtown walking tour map work session after that. So let's take 5 and be back at 12:07. All right, I guess let's get started when everyone's back on. I just wanted to start off by saying that I think the map looks fantastic. I was expecting it to look good because the other ones look great, but I was really just impressed by this.
Thank you. I mean, not to me, but yeah. Good way to start.
Yeah. So Kay and Dee Dee, I guess I'll pass this off to y'all, and you can guide this session however you want.
Great. Kay, do you want to start? You want me to start?
Go ahead and start.
Okay, I'd like to first say, and this is not just because Phil said that, is how really amazing it's been to work with this designer. And we, of course, all know that she was designed the Star Hill map and the UVA enslaved map. But she also, I don't think I really realized that she's done a lot of projects, not just in Charlottesville, but a lot of other places. But she also did the Vinegar Hill catalog, the Gunter Oswald catalog, which I guess I sort of knew, but it's actually come into play with this with this particular project. But I say that for a couple reasons. One is that her depth of knowledge about local, particularly African American history, is really impressive. Again, that was kind of like a plus, and I didn't realize how deep it is. And in these conversations, she really talks a lot about elements of the history. Secondly, she's really, because of her experience, and I suspect from her talent as well, that she has a very, very interesting and strong, she feels strongly, but a very interesting perspective on how people use maps. You know, and that's come into play a lot. Kay and I have engaged with her through this process, and we've had questions like, well, what about this? What about, and always it's her answers are very professional. They're really, really about user, you know, this sort of even a modern way of how people use maps, not just in general how people use maps. So anyway, I just wanted to say that I've been really impressed with just her depth of knowledge on so many fronts. That said, this is a prototype, and I don't think I expected to see what you've just seen. This is really just the very first thing we saw after we gave her our whole freaking spreadsheet with, you know, we were just like dumping on it kind of basically. I'm not sure what I expected to see, but it is a prototype, and the content is informative, but not in any fashion final. We really want you to take away from it what kinds of information we can have on it, how it's organized, and really getting around to what do we want. So I don't, Kay, do you want to expand on that particular introduction at all to it?
Yeah, I think I would just say focus on the form, not the content, because actually, you know, you will get into some of the content. That is what different topics we want to cover or what themes, but not in the writing of it or anything. To follow up though on what Dee Dee was saying about her professionalism, you've got a low resolution prototype here. And, you know, to get it into high resolution, and it's 22% I think it's 22% smaller than, of course, it would be when it's, you know, on the right paper. So we're looking, you know, we're looking at a really very, very rough draft. And of course, we will see it in those other forms. So what we're trying to do is to find out from the committee at this meeting, you know, to sort of ask you some different things, like one in particular is, do we have the right themes? Another one, which I guess Dee Dee alluded to without saying it, is, you know, on our map on page 2, the smaller map, do we want to have another layer that would show, maybe with dotted lines or something, where the old Vinegar Hill was, that outline for that part of the history? That would be another layer in the map, but she can do that. So I think what she really brings to it is understanding about how it will work visually. She's done a lot of maps. She knows what people look at, and, you know, walking around, you know, which is a different thing than when you're studying it at home, but when you're walking around, how to make the map user friendly. So I think it's some of those things. Some things will just be identification only, you know, bulleted items that you could be walking along. Oh, what's this building or what's that building? And then the significance of various sites that we do want to get more detail writing up about. Of course, we also will be able to have an audio tour and a digital thing where we may be digitally, where you could go on and look at the map and you can have more details or link to some other section that you want to read in more detail. But this will be, once we decide on the prototype and what will be in the content, then we will be writing to that content.
And I'd like to talk a little bit about the themes, because I'm not sure we got the right themes.
Yeah,
We were really organizing that spreadsheet by which things kind of work together. And she took that and she made those into themes. And so, you know, I definitely think that piece of it can very much be morphed. But I'd like to talk about the pullout map on page 2, because that is something that surprised us.
And even before we do that, if there's any sort of things from the group in general that you want to ask, you know, to just throw out in the beginning that we would, concerns or something, we can, you know, and then we can march through it maybe if anybody has anything.
My main thought was just that the, and this is like super minor, but like the blues under the themes are really hard to tell apart. There's like 3 of them that.
Yeah.
And I can respond to that because I had the same reaction. I talked to her this morning, and that's part of the resolution thing. Actually, one of them is purple, you know, but you can't see it. And it's because of the blues. And she says, you know, one, anyway, the way she described it, I think when we see the next iteration, they'll be very different. But
okay, that's what that's
not a minor thing. I had the same thought too. Thanks.
And those kinds of things should be, even as we go along and we see different drafts, should be relatively easy to change. It's really content and volume that work.
I wanted to echo, I had the same thought about Vinegar Hill, that it's hard to put on a map something that isn't there anymore. And I think having that overlay would be really good, particularly because there aren't that many sites on that part of the map. And then the other comment with that was, if there was a way to visually connect the 2 separate maps, so you knew that like they actually went like this, because if I didn't already know how they connected, it would be kind of, I don't think I would know like which way they were oriented from each other.
Right. You could sort of take a lesson maybe from an atlas where you know, know where to go next.
Yeah.
Thanks. Those are good.
Margaret? Similar to what Phil just said, I too thought that it would be good to be able to get all of the sites, including the Vinegar Hill area, onto one map, either literally on one map or linked across the pages, as he mentioned, because the distance is not that far, because some of the same features occur on both of these maps as kind of a showing how your overlay could go. But, it just seems to me it might be worth entertaining the idea of whether all the sites could go on one map. As I say, either physically one or a very closely linked one. There have been some maps of not exactly this type, but ones that have been extant in the city in recent years that showed important sites, including some of the historic ones in both the county and the city. I think one of these maps was the county on one side and the city on the other. But what they wound up doing was telescoping some distances, making clear that there were some literal distances that were not being accurately depicted, but it was, served the purpose, of course, of getting more spots into your same visual display block. Just an idea.
No, that's great. And she talked about putting them on one map, and she just really felt particularly with the, once we went outside the mall, and again, we didn't necessarily ask her to do that, but it's an interesting opportunity. She said it just got too far, it got too small, in her opinion. But we can, take that back to her, because the same thought, but then we can talk to her more about really if they need to be really separated, how best to link them. I think that's a great feedback on it.
Yeah. Well, I had one other thought of a different matter, and I think I gather that you and Kay, Dee Dee, the two of you all are already sort of reassured of this, but the question in my mind, and I'm certainly happy to be assured also, but that there will be enough space on this 11 by 18 to include all of the sites that we want to include, with at least some amount of information about them, whether or not there's an image for each one of them, which would be ideal. But I guess I'm just asking to be reassured that there's enough room for all of that. Yeah.
Wasn't,
Be enough room for a picture of each one. And
Yeah.
so, for example, you might have indication of a number of different, let's say Charlottesville's oldest homes. I mean, I'm not even sure which ones they are, but let's just say that. And there were a number of homes. We might have them identified on the map, and you might be able to tune in and hear something or go to your internet, but we won't have enough space
Okay.
to write about each one. In fact, it'll be fairly abbreviated, what we do write about most sites,
Right.
so it will be, it really is a walking around tour, and now you see this, now you see that. But it's just, and so it's also possible if people wanted to have less sites, you can say more, but right now we have all of them.
Yeah, and I think the amount of space on the 100 words or whatever is going to fit in there is about how much anybody would actually read about it anyway.
That's exactly what she said.
Yeah.
She said people won't read it. They won't.
Yeah.
The opportunity is for a couple things. One is to create a template that we can, as we're going to have that list of sites and themes, we can actually consider and produce maps, for each theme. So this initial map does not have to do everything. The challenge though will still be in saying, all right, what are the downtown sites that we want to incorporate into that? But there are others, and I actually met Anne last Friday at when I spoke to that church group at Penn Park. She's delightful. But she's we just talked about this being something that we can use over time to create other tours and that people may be interested in. I asked her, we almost imagine something that could be on demand, but that's further down the road. But I think that the real challenge for you all is to say, all right, what's this area that this initial map, and what are those sites? And, now we have sort of a space budget to determine what size images, what size text. And I certainly can tell you that I can't read what's on the old map, so I hope it's bigger. But sorry.
Oh, it's way bigger. It's way bigger than what you got. It just fits on a convenient.
22%. It's 22% smaller. And I will also say, and Jenny will attest to this, when we were doing the Bridge Builders book and Anne designed it, and we said, oh, the type looks sort of small when we're looking at the proof. And actually then it wasn't at all. And she's got how the letters are, the white space between the letters and between the lines. She really knows the science of this. And so I do trust her on that part.
Okay, so here you go. Here, sorry. Can you see this? Maybe not. Maybe I have to unblur. But whoops, my bad.
The difference in size.
Yeah, I just want to show you the difference in size here. So this is the prototype, and this is the actual size. So you can see. It's really going to be bigger. So, and this one, for all of you who have it, it's the UVA one, is the same, literally the same size. So same number of panels, same orientation, different design, it's like from the inside. It's got more words in it. But one of the things we questioned actually about it was, should maybe the narratives be under the large map? And she was really quite insistent about how people are going to be holding this map and walking down and seeing sites. And then when you want to sort of know more, you turn it over. And apparently that's the way people use maps. And so I got thoroughly convinced on that. Okay. Are there any other? I want to talk about that other side, the little map on the other side at some point, but I shouldn't. If anybody else has any general things that you want us to address or want us to now or address to the designer or are concerned about.
Say that I like the clustering of the sites. I think that, I don't know if that was intentional or that's just how it worked out with where things were, but I think when I look at the site, I'm like, oh, I can go over to Court Square and see a bunch of things, or I can walk down the mall and see a bunch of things, or I can go over here and see a bunch of things. I'm not, sort of like, oh, I have to walk 18 blocks to see 4 sites. So I think it's a very effective.
And I have one question I'd like to ask the group, because I kept thinking that under the themes that maybe the African American heritage and civil rights theme and education should sort of be together. And I think you could make an argument for them being separate or not, but basically that is why we're talking about them. We're not just talking about them as, well, here's a school, we're talking about them in the context of the historical, these sites. So everything from McGuffey, which is now arts, but was a school, and Midway, and
I think it's useful to have them as a separate category. But I do think that it's actually a really, the school names and history has been like a research area of mine. And I think it is important to make sure that is that history is woven into the description, and not just oh, it's a pretty colonial style building, but that these Lane and Midway and McGuffey were white schools, and Lane was involved in desegregation, and have that as a very prominent theme in the description of the school.
Right, and actually that brings up 2 different points. One is that there are historic markers that can help inform anybody who's walking on the ground, including in front of Lane for the Charlottesville 12. But in Court Square, there's a bunch of them, and on Market Street, and Three Notch has one. And so really, how do you use on the ground? Because this is an on the ground map for the most part. How do you use those pieces that can, you don't have to repeat, in a sense, all of that information. But back to that sort of the educated kind, again, that Anne was looking at our spreadsheet and she saw that there was the schools that we put on our spreadsheet and they were off the mall. And that's kind of how we got that second pull-out map. And the first thing I saw is, my God, Vinegar Hill is on that map.
Mhm.
And we talked about in after that point, outlining it, and did a beautiful map of Vinegar Hill in that catalog, and she owns it. So she was sort of excited about, really identifying Vinegar Hill. But once you start doing that, she called it education and disparity, because it's the schools. That's what she put on that map, because that was what was on our spreadsheet. But if you start putting Vinegar Hill on there, what you've got is a recognition of the overlying history of African-American disenfranchisement, of segregation, that is embedded in all of our history. So it kind of gives you, by pulling it out and talking about, in the 20th century, it's really about education, schools, and neighborhoods. And that's what you've got on that map, is you've got an opportunity to really, express this, very expansive history of Charlottesville that is embedded in those, two themes, such that I think gives a lens through which you're doing all of the others. I don't know if that makes any sense. It's just what came to me, and we didn't set it up that way, but when I saw that, I thought, oh my God, that's 20, there is your lens. Anyway, go ahead.
So, hey, Dee Dee, and just again, from talking to Ann, the first question is, does this format, does this layout, does this look good? Because I think then, once you sort of are in agreement on that, then the content discussion has to be had. But I think it's really first and foremost is spatially, design-wise, is this the idea that the committee wants? And then you can, all right, we all like that design. Then we start plugging in the photos and the text.
Thank you. That's good. Getting us back to basics. Yeah.
Go ahead, Jenny.
Out are so much better than anything we've ever had for this kind of medium. So I many thanks for doing that. At some point, I'd like to return to the education topic, but in terms of the design, I'm quite pleased with it and happy for us to move forward from this point of departure.
Thank you.
And I wanted to just mention something that Dee Dee sort of breezed over, just so you'll know, because I kind of forgot this and then I was looking at it again. And that is, when there is a sign, then beside each of these descriptions of the place, there will be marker. If you look in the legend, the last one is historic marker. So again, a person who's looking at this map, they'll, Court Square, oh, there's going to be a marker at Court Square, and they'll be able to, or at the courthouse, they'll be able to find that and then read that. So we're trying to, build into it other information that they can look at as they're going along.
Other comments about the design? Thank you, Jeff. Before we start getting into anything else.
I do want to say, I don't think that as I'm just looking at this, I don't see how the two maps can go together. If you look at the little map, it takes up 2 columns. The big map takes up 3 columns. Unless you put it underneath, you can't put it beside in this design. You can't, it won't work. It's too big for the brochure.
Folds will this have?
Pardon?
How many folds will this have?
This will have, let's see. Well, each 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the bottom and on the top. Yeah, like what she's holding up.
Okay, so how do the 2 maps end up when it's folded?
They will be on opposite sides.
Okay.
And one of the questions we had is, why do you have to have covers on both sides? I mean, because the first panel is looks identical on both sides, even though one of them is on the inside. And she said that was really important for orientation for the visitor, and that it does enable you to sort of get not only larger graphics, but more information about how to use the map. I mean, that, you know, you can use one of those panels that has a sort of a deep color background, because again, that distinguishes it and it draws the eye and it does all this designer stuff. But to not only talk about how to use the map, but other resources you can go to.
Right.
That I think that will be really important. Not to introduce questions to you, but those are the questions we had after we saw the initial prototype. We had several questions, and it all, again, it so often goes back to these are designer ways of people looking, how people look at things.
And they will be the same, right? The front and the back.
They won't be exactly the same. One, we can have different photos. Secondly, if you look on the back one, you could have as the content on the back, the mostly blue one, not the one with picture. You could talk about the thematic walking tours there. Whereas on the front, you could say something else more general about the tour. So, you know, that will decide as we try to get into like, what are the general things that we want to say that applies to the whole map, and what are the things that are specific to each site. So they'll be a little different.
Yeah, the front, the bottom front, that blue panel that ends up being on the front. So it's on page 1. On yours, it's on page 1. That's where you also acknowledge the city, you acknowledge the Historic Resources Committee. Yeah, that's your sort of classic back of a brochure. Whereas on the inside gives you more opportunity to get a little more granular.
Do we waste more of them? Maybe this didn't come up, but if, you know, if I'm a tourist and I'm just grabbing things out of the panel where they're displayed, if I see it says walking tour and has a different block, am I going to grab 2 of those?
No, because all they'll see is the one. This doesn't fold 2 ways. The Star Hill Union Ridge does fold 2 ways. So you could, I thought it was exactly the same thing, Jenny, but there'll only be one way to see this. I mean, I suppose you could turn it around, but, oh, I see. So I think I know what you're talking about, but I mean, that concern is good. I see what you're saying. And it could be that doesn't need to say that, but we can, that's a design issue that should, you know, as we get a little farther along, if we continue to think that's a problem, should be easy to.
The problem with running through these so fast.
I agree. Yeah.
Paper.
Yeah.
If there's a way so that if somebody puts it back in
Backwards.
backwards.
Yeah.
Take 2 and they don't need to.
It's a good question.
Being uber frugal, but.
Mm-hmm. And can we use the space? Yeah. We kept thinking, oh, we could use space, we could get more space. And she said, be careful. You have to be careful on how people are going to interact with this map. And really, what I didn't really see is there are multiple ways to interact with it that come out in this design. Again, I wouldn't have thought of. I'm writing these down though. So going for, I mean, are we okay to talk about going forward, what we need next? Anybody else have anything more generalized about the design concern?
Exactly what Kay said about education. And everything you said, Dee Dee, about education and framing the space and segregation all makes a lot of sense. It's all what we've all been talking about really for decades. But I don't know that it works, that it lends itself to the walking tour format. Because if it's a hot day or a cold day or a windy day, or you have an appointment, you're going to do something at a particular time, you're going to trek all the way over to the county office building to look at Lane High School. I mean, that's, you're crossing difficult transportation systems, the same with going up to Midway. because there isn't a historic building there anymore. I think that people would be disappointed to spend their time and energy to go to these sites as part of this particular walking tour. And that's not to disparage the concepts in any way, but just thinking about, you know, your average family of 4 dragging their kids, or perhaps they've got grandma in tow and she's got a bum knee or something. You know, you've just, what are you getting for going that far that you couldn't get maybe in another medium better?
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. And in some ways, and I don't know what Anne would say about that, but as I've been contemplating this very concern about using that space for this topic, is it's not clear it's meant to be part of the walking tour as the first page is, that walking down the mall or going to Court Square. That it is more showing you sort of geographically the ideas that you can see within this theme of this huge, you know, part of our history that has to do with segregating people and isolating, you know, communities, that you can see it in a map. You can see how it was all very close. And I don't know if that's really what she was saying. I'm happy to ask her.
The Vinegar Hill walking tour.
Yeah.
And so that would be a real theme of a Vinegar Hill walking tour, of how the schools, both black and white, in effect marked the space. They became the boundaries, some of the important boundaries of the space, and orchestrated how black and white interacted or did not interact with each other. And with Vinegar Hill, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm wondering if we wanted to have those themes, if we would, and I don't mean to sound frivolous, but we would substitute entertainment for education, because we have at least 2, well, probably 3 segregated places of entertainment: the Levy Opera House, the Jefferson Theater, the Paramount Theater, site of the old Lafayette Theater. Maybe there are some others I'm not thinking about. That we could get across that theme of segregation and separation without making people walk a greater distance for not a lot of visual interest.
Well, so,
I'd like to say,
I mean, that is one of our themes on the other side. And, you know, and then I think part of, and I'm not arguing with you or which one it should be. I'm just saying that we do have that as an inclusive sub-theme, but not as a pull-out theme. And one of the other, again, and this was just my process of thinking of why you would use this theme as your pullout. And she did it for geographic reasons, but is that people, I think, as you know, as much as we know about pre-emancipation, about the history of slavery and the history of theaters, I mean, people really understand, I think, the history of education, of segregated schools. And, you know, some people more than others would have heard about Vinegar Hill, and they understand the segregation for housing. And it's those 2 bigger, you know, bigger examples of what Southern history is and what this whole town has been, that I think you can at least.
I'm just questioning the geography. I just think
Yeah,
it's
could I say something?
feasible.
Okay, yeah, Kay, why don't you break in?
Yeah, what I wanted to say is that the smaller map, it is separate, and I'm not sure it would make people wander down there unless, I think what could happen in the smaller map is that one, there could be more emphasis put on Jefferson schools, so that somebody would look at that map and go like, oh, well, I kind of like to go there and look at what they've got, you know, if we have that. And also McGuffey, because it was a segregated school, but it's now an arts center, and that people might want to go to that too. So I think because there's so fewer sites here, it's less likely that somebody's going to go like, oh, I've got to go there. It kind of gives you those choices. And you can see the things that are really grouped together and like, oh, the mall makes sense, or oh, this red spot over in Vinegar Hill. But I would hope that we could maybe feature for this other map something like Jefferson School and McGuffey that might draw people there, because we do want people to go.
Right, I think that's an excellent idea, and that sort of goes back to the economic development tourism origins of having these maps, you know, decades ago anyway. But I wonder if we shouldn't focus on the Jefferson School and the McGuffey School as sort of the point counterpoint, and leave out the Midway and Lane, because maybe they belong to different contexts. And then we're not encouraging so much travel across really difficult roads with a lot of pedestrian automotive conflicts, and you know, it's just dangerous. And I just, you know, having led groups and having traveled as a family, multi-generational, I just don't see it.
Yeah, I think it would also be useful to have like on the other side where it says the site of, and so like specifically like, you know, the site of Midway High School, and then an indication that like Lane High School is now the county office building and not a like public building that you can go in.
Right, and we are trying to indicate where you can go in.
Yeah,
And you
yeah, I
can
think that's good.
go to Jefferson, and if you go to Jefferson, you're only going to have to cross, you know, either at Ridge and Main or at the Omni if people are visitors. I mean, I think it's a better cross. There's still conflicts, but it's better than trekking people down Beck's Hill and having that, you know, 3 or 4-way crossing to get across to the county office building, and then you're just in an office building.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think people are necessarily going to go there. I do think like the Jefferson School being on it, I mean, that it's such a historical site, it basically has to be on it anyway, but it also is a good anchor for people who are then going to pick up the other map.
And it could be a point of departure for people. They could start their tour at the Jefferson School. So I like,
and like, so I mean, I think one of the points that was made a little earlier is that not these may be sites that people are not necessarily going to go to, but if they're doing the walking tour, it's important for them to know about them. And so like, I think Lane and Midway are, I mean, the Midway site, I mean, I could see that being there or not, but it's important that people know that they're there, even if they choose not to actually go to them, and that it's a good.
you can mark the spot, but you're not calling it out. You know, because there are those compulsive people who feel like they have to complete the map.
Well, see,
one of the reasons you want Midway, and I wondered if you could, is a way to indicate that something's sort of a ghost site. You know, I mean, there is an indication on the map for that. I just don't think it's very easy to read. I think it says historic only or something.
You know, there's the wonderful photograph of the Armistice Day with all of the cars and all of the people that are gathered there that actually shows, you know, that road full of people.
Right.
Is that at Midway, you mean?
Midway, yeah.
Yes.
Right, and so that maybe you do just show the pictures of places that are no longer there. But one of the important things about Midway is that it was where the White High School was created in the late 1800s, 9 years before there was a Black High School at Jefferson. I mean, so if you want to tell that story, and Lane is where desegregation battle was. So you know, it's
to do that. It's a complicated story. It maybe deserves its own medium rather than trying to cram it in to this one.
Could be. What do you think about showing just the outline of Vinegar Hill and having some?
Oh, I think that's great. I think you could ghost out Vinegar Hill.
Yeah.
And especially if you're crossing, you know, that to get to Jefferson or to start at Jefferson and move east, Vinegar Hill is part of that story. So you can delineate Lane and Midway, but not call them out as places to go.
Okay, right, got it.
Dee Dee, I might just recommend, if I might step in, that if you do demarcate Vinegar Hill, it be clarified as the Vinegar Hill redevelopment boundaries specifically, so that there's not,
Yeah.
so that there's not just a sense of,
Right.
the wrong side of the block or,
Or
whatnot.
that's all there was of Vinegar Hill.
Exactly, yeah.
Right.
I don't quite know. I mean, so when Anne did this for the catalog, it goes sort of, down where all the businesses were going down towards the mall, and there's a sort of a V where the, and Ridge Street now just goes right through it. That's another, that's another really just interesting, like, oh, which brings me to a principle that Anne reminded me. I mean, she talked about this, and this is a real principle in interpretation, is that it is way better to show people, or have people hear or see things that lead them to draw conclusions. That sort of what's called an aha moment in interpretation, rather than sort of clubbing them over the head and saying, look, here,
Right.
this is what you have to think, and this is if you give them that snippet of information that they can go, oh, and I think Vinegar Hill is sort of like that, because if you delineate it and you've got sort of enough information about it, even just a little bit, and then people walk through this empty parking lot space, that you get that, like, oh, there were 41 businesses, there were 3 churches, there were, and now there's McDonald's and a Staples. But anyway, that's just a principle. That's just a sort of a basic principle that it's maybe easier said than done.
But I think it's good what Robert just said about how to identify it.
Definitely.
Oh, yeah. So I can send you the map sheet that I'm not picturing what that is, but we've talked about this so much in this committee about the, where the outline is.
Okay, that was a good session on that, and I look forward to seeing how it progresses.
Yeah, thanks everybody for
Thank
your
you.
feedback. I think this will be really helpful, as we do the next iteration of it, and then try to do some writing.
Thanks for all of your work on it.
Yeah, thank you for bringing the printed map to us. Yeah, that was very nice.
And I think one of the next, as we go on, it will be important to get feedback from you all, is what sites, what those little numbers and all the things, what really needs to be on there. I think there's plenty of stuff that's probably going to come off of it, because it just happened to be on our spreadsheet and it doesn't make sense to be on there. But what we need to know, what really should be on there, particularly with those bulleted sites that might be missing.
Let's move on to staff updates. Jeff or Robert?
I didn't prepare any updates, to be honest. Jeff, if there's anything that you'd like me to share, I'm happy to, but it's been a busy month for us. We have 10 items on the BAR coming up, so we've been a little focusing our attention in that direction. Jeff, do you have anything to share?
No, and thanks for saying that. Yeah, it's going to be a very busy Tuesday night BAR. We did last Friday. I said I spoke with that church group, and it was really interesting. The the experience that we had with them, and some of the questions that came out of it. And but we continue to, I don't want to say we, but certainly the Historical Society with Sam Taller and Shelley Murphy continue to build a database, if you will, of names and individuals that we believe we can associate with Penn Park. And I know, Jelaine, you had asked, you've gotten Sam involved in some of your questions too. He's an encyclopedia on what is known, and if he's not in his head, he knows where to find it. So I'm glad you're having a conversation with him about that. I think one of the things, and then I mentioned again to Jelaine, was 2 weeks ago, I was on a phone call with 2 professors at Clemson University that are very involved in developing an enormous database of about 6,000 or 7,000 individuals that were enslaved in that property down there. And
Sorry, Jeff, did you say Clemson?
yes, go Tigers. And so but they were, and Shelley Murphy was on the call, and Tom Chapman, and it's I don't know, it's a database that allows them to kind of insert facts as they know them, as they hear them, and there's whatever algorithm kind of says, hey, maybe these 2 people are the same people. Maybe there's an association here you should look at. Thing is it's probably something that needs to be done on an institutional scale. And I think I joke with Shalane, like, Chief, do we know any here in town that might, be of that scale? But it's it really the thing that also got me thinking, and Dee Dee, go back to the bypass fight and all of that stuff that we learned. And I mean, I could fill a thumb drive with what everybody kept sending me. And someday I need to put that out there. But it's like, how do we take what Jelane's developing, what came out of the stuff from the bypass, what's coming out of this Penn Park research, certainly what Shelley's working on at the university, so that this community wasn't that large back then. And I continue to be astonished with the amount of information, the amount of documentary records that Sam and Shelley are able to access and that really tell this story. I told a group last Friday, I feel like I'm in a Robert Louis Gates, not one show, but like it's like a marathon because of the way the research is done, the information it's found. But I think it's something probably bigger than anything the HRC could be involved in. But if I had a magic wand, it would be, to get the university somehow to be involved and sponsor something at the scale of what they're doing at Clemson, because it was extraordinary, and it was humbling seeing, how much they've done and been able to accomplish. So, but that's the only update. Well, and I guess the Robert, if you wanted to, just fill in the blanks on what I mentioned earlier about what Ashley had asked us about the Channel 29 opportunity, I think it is. And then we are going to be moving forward with the first phase of the downtown mall, that cultural landscape report. Now, this is the first piece, is really that reconnaissance level PIF, that evaluation of the mall as a designed landscape, its evaluation relative to eligibility for the National Register. So there will be additional phases to follow that'll get more into I think stakeholder discussions about the mall and things like that. But we're putting something together that will be publicized about what the group is going to be working on probably in the next couple of weeks. So.
And just, Jeff, to kind of respond what you were prompting, I'm still working it out with Ashley and with folks at DHR, but sometime in the next few months, there are going to be some sort of informational webinars that are broadcasted on public television in Charlottesville. And then we also might have a spot on NBC 29 just to let people know about the historic survey that'll be going on at the downtown mall, and to kind of alert folks that in the coming months there will be some sort of informational sessions in live that will share the results of that survey. So just some publicity that we're looking forward to.
And I'd just like to say, Jeff, as you talk about this project and relating it to the bypass project and some other projects, so much of this all comes down to this amazing community of researchers who just share their information. There's not a lot of, I think, Jillian, you called it sovereignty. I mean, they're just, people just put it out there. They do so much work. And I don't think we should dismiss the generosity of all of these researchers.
Dee Dee will tell you, so back during the fun third of my life, I spent whatever it was fighting the bypass. It was I get something from Dee Dee, I get something from Cinder Stan, I get something from Steve Thompson, I get something from Edwina, and people just kept saying, well, here, look at this, look at this, look at this. And I would just keep piling into, I actually have a chronological run of all the emails, and it's like 100 pages. So just to try say, all right, I'm hearing a little bit from everybody. And I remember, and I don't know, Dee Dee, you may have been in the room when I talked to Cinder and Steve and said, you know, all this stuff's been sent to me. Are you all writing a book? And I think Cinder, she fell off her chair laughing. She said, no, I'm done writing books. But I've become sort of this repository of all that stuff. And I know it exists out there. I know Dee, you have it, but it's like, I just need to find the time to dive into, you know, a bazillion megabytes of data. And I don't know, maybe Jelaine, I just need to burn something and send it to you and say, see what you can make of this. Also, Jelaine, were you able to locate, Jordy have those tapes that you were looking for, or at least the?
No, not those specific interviews. In talking with Andrea yesterday, she says that the city has these interviews.
Yeah, I gave all the tapes. They're on cassettes. Not all of them were taped. And oh my gosh, this goes back maybe 3 years ago. And Jordy and I were in my office, and I was like, hey, look at this thing I found in Mary Joy's cabinets. And so some of the tapes are busted, some are in bad shape, but he was going to try and record them. So he has all the tapes. Thing is, there are, and you saw on the list, there's some individuals said, you can tape me, but you can't use my story. So they're
data sovereignty again.
Right.
So we probably shouldn't take up space in this meeting about that.
Yeah,
we can sidebar about that, but yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, he has those tapes. So if you can, and I hope so still.
Great, thanks a lot. For that.
And Jeff, you are really good at organizing all this stuff. I've seen your notebooks, and you got those frickin' notebooks this big.
I hide my disorganization behind a thick binder. So, but thank you for the observation.
Student's dream.
Okay, so on to the next item, coordinated agenda for next month's meeting. Were there any agenda items that anyone wanted to add?
It seems like, Phil, we should have a significant time to discuss Court Square again if we're going to have a status report to send to council. So we should have something to review. For the walking tour subcommittee, I'm not sure if there will be another iteration, but I'm happy to put time in the agenda for the walking tour map if you think there will be something.
We'll certainly give you an update, whether or not.
Yeah, I think there'll be something. I think we should plan on it.
Okay.
And okay, that's great. Onto announcements. I will say one thing I saw last week. Oh, I guess Sally and I probably should have talked about presenting for the I forgot what the acronym stands for.
Yeah.
Apple, yeah.
Yeah. Sally gave a great 3-minute presentation for at that gathering last week.
The Preservation Area, or the Piedmont Area Preservation Alliance.
Yes. And that was recorded, and I think is going to be publicly available if it's not already. That was a good summary of what a lot of the local historical groups are doing. And one of the things that came out of that was there's a book coming out revolving around Burley High School coming out soon. That looks interesting. Any other events or things coming up?
I wanted to compliment Sally on the really good job that she did presenting our work. And then I just wanted to share that after that session, an old friend of mine that I don't see very often contacted me, and we got together, and she said, you know, after the events of Tuesday, I was so discouraged and despondent all day Wednesday, and something told me to tune into this Zoom on Thursday night, and that there is so much interesting and exciting work going on in our area, particularly among people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. And she said it gave me hope for the future, that if even our public system is somehow disrupted and dismantled, that this important work is going on and it's available in historical societies and museums and preservation organizations, and that it just gave her hope for the future. So I just wanted to share that with everyone.
Thanks, Jenny. Okay, and with that, I conclude this meeting of the Historic Resources Committee. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you all very much. Have a good month.
Yeah.
See you later.
Bye, everybody.